Hi.
Hello.
I have a little bit of like a husk today.
Yeah, you got a bit of Phoebe going on.
We're recording from the Caravan because I did that last time and it was pretty good audio.
I thought it was really good, yeah.
Yeah. We have a Caravan storage facility very close to our house, so we can just like scoot on down and it's like we've rented office space.
We walked to work this morning, walked to the studio.
It's kind of funny because we were just walking down the street. We live in like the middle of nowhere countryside and we're like walking down the street to nowhere with our laptops in our hands and our neighbors are like, where the fuck are you going?
Why are you dressed up for once?
Yeah, we're like in makeup, not that dressed up, but like not in sweatpants. Yeah, Matthew has a Caravan like behind him. We're in a Caravan. Anyway, yeah.
We're in the Caravan.
We're in the Caravan. I do want to renovate this space, and now that I know that this is like the best recording space for us. It's a small room. It's lots of soft furnishings. You see why it's a good recording space, and there's lots of light because there's like windows on every side, so it's good for video too.
So we might kick Violet out of her bedroom and have a podcast recording studio.
Well, I just might, when I renovate the Caravan, I might keep that in mind for like what I want the podcast to look like.
Okay, so today's episode is about moving from the city to the countryside and what we like about both and where we want to be long term, because it's a constant debate for us, and balancing work and where we want to be for our lifestyle. Doesn't feel like there's one perfect place.
There's so many factors that we're constantly thinking about, and I think a lot of other people probably feel the same way or having the same thoughts, especially if you're not from the same place. I think if we were both born and raised here, I think it's less of a topic of conversation.
Yeah, I think thinking about where Violet's going to grow up puts a different spin on it, because when you talk about your childhood, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, that's nice. Mine was very different, but now it's where do we want to be for her? What's the best of your upbringing, the best of mine?
Okay, so let's start with moving out of London, because we made the decision to leave London, move to the countryside. We bought a house out here, but we both have like corporate jobs. We both were, what, you disagree?
No, we do, but I guess the difference was you could work from anywhere. I'm trying to think of the timings when you were fully remote. Even in Newbury, you weren't fully remote?
Nope.
Okay.
So I'll talk about my side, you talk about your side.
All right.
So basically, when we lived in, and I mean, I guess I can start with the fact that I left Canada to London, and that's like my take on that is very short. I would say it was a huge decision to leave, but at the time when I moved, I was 24, and I'm so glad I did that then, because now when we talk about moving country, it's such a big decision and it almost feels impossible. Whereas then, before, I was like, my job was good, but it's like you can always find another job when you're 24.
Does it not make it easier to move because you've already done it? I feel more confident that we could just go somewhere else because you've already done it and it worked out well.
I mean, I feel confident in like I've done it before and there are steps, but it would be much more difficult. Like, two of us need to find a good job, and I talked to my sister about this recently. The more money you make and the more things that you have in your life, the more there is to maintain. If you want to move somewhere new, you'd have to find a job for this amount, I'd have to find a job for this amount, because I think with us, we don't want to compromise on the lifestyle we have. And I guess if you were willing to compromise on that and just start over completely, then it's not a big decision. It's easy to do if you want to. So that's where it gets harder, I think, is whereas when I was 24, like, I could move and make the same amount of money, and I didn't have a house. I was just renting, so I could just go rent somewhere else.
Yeah.
You don't have to transfer assets from one country to another country and like pay a bunch of taxes. I had like the minimum amount in my bank account that I needed to be able to move to the UK. So
yeah, and you sold a bunch of stuff, didn't you?
I sold all my stuff and just came with 4 suitcases. If you're young, then definitely that's the time to try different countries. Like, whatever you think is holding you back isn't holding you back compared to what will down the road.
But having said that, for us, it's probably easier now than it would be in 5 years, because if Violet has friends and she's settled in school, it just adds another thing to consider.
Yeah, probably. It probably just gets harder the older you get.
Yeah.
At the same time, you could see how it would get easy at some point when maybe you're more senior at work and you can start the office in Sydney, Australia, versus now they're like, well, we're not going to transfer you there. You're important, but you're not that important.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, that was the first thing. And then we lived in London, and we lived there for like a year together, but you were there.
Yeah, I was there before. I think I'd been there, I don't know, a good few years, 3 or 4 years before maybe.
I thought you were there for like 7 years.
No, I was there like 10 in total.
Yeah, so
my timeline's gone.
More than 3 or 4 years.
When did you, what year? So 2018?
It doesn't matter, but like I was only there for a year. So
okay, I was there for longer.
Yeah. You hadn't moved that far. You lived in Birmingham your whole life.
I was a city boy. I was born in Birmingham, went to university in Manchester, and then moved to London. So the 3 big cities of the UK, I've lived in them all. And yeah, I never even considered moving to the countryside. It was never something I thought about. I wanted to be in the city.
I think that's good. I mean, young people should be in the city 100%. It was basically time for us to find a new place to live in London, and we just kind of started looking and expanding our search field, and we ended up kind of like an hour outside of London, finding, rather than a flat, it was a place it was like a house, a little cottage.
Well, it was the classic when we were searching for a new property. We expanded the search radius, and for the same money, the further away from the centre you get, the more of a home we had. The bigger the place, the more rooms. And then, because we both thought, can we really live this far away from work and the city? But we realised every weekend we would spend driving out of the city, and we could just do more of that.
Exactly. So my job at the time was outside of London anyway, and an hour into London isn't a big deal. That's not really moving, from our perspective. I mean, an hour outside of London is very doable. I wouldn't even...
Most people within London, well, lots of people commute up to an hour in London. It takes that long to get across. Yeah.
So we did that, and we liked it, basically. Long story short. And then COVID kind of started and all of that, and so not to like get into it all, but we planned a big wedding, and we had to cancel it. Our wedding was basically 4 months into the start of COVID, and so we saved. I think our wedding was probably budgeted at like £30,000. Yeah. So that just went straight to a house deposit, and we just totally shifted gears and decided to look for a house. Yeah. And I don't even know how we ended up where we did, because now we're like 2.5 hours outside of London.
Well, it was because my family all moved this way, and we said it would be nice to be close to them if we had a baby.
That was involved in like, oh, they're living in this area. If we found something there, sure, that'd be a benefit. But we were very much looking in a wide range of places, and we were kind of just looking for a house we liked. There was no...
Yeah. But that's why we looked in this area.
We looked all over the place, and it wasn't so much... where is your family? That was kind of an afterthought from my perspective. Like, it was obviously a nice thing, but we both were just wanting to find a house that we really, really liked. Yeah. But neither of us had remote contracts at the time, despite what you think. So my contract was part-time in the office. The thing that blurred this is COVID happened, and so I wasn't, neither of us were in the office. And so we kind of had this false sense of we're probably not going to go back in that much. Yeah. I already had a kind of part-time remote contract. So I was just like, this is kind of how I operate. I do what I want, and I let the consequences...
the rest.
Yeah, I figure out the rest later, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I want, and like, I'm not going to let some dumb job tell me what to do.
Yeah, or my job, or my commute time, because I knew that I'd have to travel still. Yeah. But I just had to suck it up. And I distinctly remember looking at the train, and I swear it was shorter than it actually is. I must have screwed up the search from Hereford to London. Yeah. Because then when I looked, it's like, actually, this is 3 hours, and I had to find a new route into London.
Yeah. Yeah, that train, I never take Hereford to London. It's a horrible service. Super expensive, too. Anyway, I'm not sure. Devon must be further away, because I was also really wanting to look at Devon, and you weren't into that at the time. It was just too far for you. Like, we got in a few arguments about it. Like, you just didn't want to commute that far, which is understandable, because while my job was basically remote, yours it was, but they were definitely pushing you back in to see clients and stuff, because it's different.
Yeah, and I think we basically decided that I would travel, but I'd have to stop over more. So I would stay for 2 or 3 nights if I needed to.
And what happened with my job is I was being asked to go to the office, and I did do some of these long trips to the office. Not, it was max once every 2 weeks for me, but even that was not appealing at all. And then I got pregnant, and so I was just absolutely not into it. And then very quickly I just started looking for another job at my company that was based out of headquarters. And so, and obviously headquarters isn't in the UK, so it would become a global, totally remote role. And so that's what I did. And this is where I think manifestation does have something to do with it. I was like, full steam ahead. I want to live in this pretty big countryside house. We're doing that. The rest will follow, and the rest followed. So, and I find that it always works out that way. Even when I wanted to move from Canada to the UK, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you have a good job, you have a good life, you got a lot of stuff. You're just moving that you have no job set up, nothing." But I was just like, "No, I have this vision of living in London." And the rest will follow.
And it all worked out.
I ended up doubling my salary. I find it always works out, but it's always really nerve-wracking to make that decision beforehand. You kind of have to have confidence that you're gonna come out on top.
Yeah, and you have that confidence.
Yeah, I think as you age, the confidence goes away.
We have more commitments that you need to have the same level of confidence in. So it's more difficult.
What does that mean?
Well, like you said, when you were younger, you just have to have confidence that you'll find a job and land on your feet, whereas we have to have confidence that you'll find a job, I'll find a job, the house will sell for the value that we want, we can sell the car. There's more things that you have to have that have to come out the way you want them to.
Yeah. So now we've been in the countryside for 3 years.
Yep.
I think we've kind of seen we've loved living where we live. We've had times where we've just debated moving back to London. Like, I think that not to London, but now we're outside of London again. I think we have kind of gone back and forth. For me, I want to stay in the countryside, but there's some things that aren't where we currently are that I would like. Mainly, I want to be closer to the water, like the ocean.
Yeah, those thoughts tend to come from when we are travelling somewhere. So when we have a weekend in London, we're like, oh, I like walking down to the coffee shop and the dogs running around the park and being able to go shopping and live a more frivolous lifestyle, I guess.
Well, yeah, and that's what you say that. I think sometimes when we travel, I always think about, could we live here? Like, when we go back to Canada, what would it be like to live here? When we go to London, what would it be like to live here? The only thing that I've settled on is I want to be by the water. In terms of the benefits of living out here, you touched on it. It's so much cheaper unintentionally when you live outside of a city, obviously.
Yeah.
What we enjoy when we're in the city, whether it's Vancouver, where we go a lot, or London, is, waking up early, going to get a coffee,
workout class,
going to like a Barry's or a Legree Pilates, like an expensive workout class, and then doing some shopping. And by the end of those weekends or a couple weeks in Vancouver, we've blown so much money.
Yeah, and if you were doing, you wouldn't be able to do that every week. Because when you go into London as well, it's so easy to get some street food, and suddenly you've paid £10 for your lunch, and someone wants to go to the pub in the evening after. Yeah. It can rack up. But we do that partly because we're on holiday, partly because that's part of the city culture.
That's what I used to do when I lived in Vancouver. I would get my nails done every week. I would go to workout classes every day, sometimes twice a day. I would go shopping after work all the time. And same within London. There's just more available, and you don't, it's a horrible feeling to feel like you can't spend money. That's why it's different here. I don't feel like I can't spend money. I'm in my house a lot of the time doing stuff around the house, or I'm living my life, and there's not all these things to spend money on. I would love if we had some nicer, like a Barry's or a Legree, something we could go to and spend money on, but it's just not here, so we just don't do it.
Yeah.
And then when we do go to the city for the weekend, it's really fun to do those things. Then you feel fine about spending whatever, the 40 pounds on the workout class. So out of what we could normally do on a daily basis, but I don't know. So I think that's a huge benefit of living in the countryside.
the size of house and garden we get for the same money. Like the value of our place, if we spent that in London, we'd probably get a like 2-bed apartment for the top, for what we would actually want.
We'd get more than that, but like we
not one we would want to move into, depending on where in London, I guess. But anyway, the point is, we get a much bigger property out in the countryside than for the same money.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. Like, the further you move away from the city, the nicer the place you get. And in the UK, it's different because there's like pockets of more pricey places, even in the countryside. But I guess if you're willing to just be in the country, like you don't need to be around a certain village or town or whatever. You can just go based on the house. And so that's what we did. We didn't want road noise. We wanted it to be quaint and idyllic, and we also wanted a decent sized house. Like we wanted it to have like good curbside appeal.
Yeah, a good garden for the dogs too.
Yeah, and so we ended up with a house that's like grade 2 listed, really pretty on the outside, had lots of potential on the inside, but it was owned by kind of older people, so we had to renovate it. But you know, it was all good, and massive garden, and I love this house, and it would be really hard to leave. But I think on the flip side, when you don't choose something based on the village, or like what we lack here is we're not around young couples or other people who are young starting a family. We actually just had a young couple move in next door, but that was complete fluke. Like there's not that many opportunities for people to move in next door. So most people around here are older, and so that's been a miss. Yeah,
and I guess that determines the types of shops and cafes and workout classes that were around as well, which is the other side of it.
Oh, I mean, obviously, beautiful scenery. So here, like, whereas when we were in London, we used to drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours out of the city to go on some walk. That's where we live now. So on a weekend, we can drive 20 minutes or an hour if we want to, but or just walk out the front door, and we're in like countryside, and it's nice, and just like a free, nice thing to do. And it's peaceful, and it's calming, and it's not craziness around you. You're not like getting stressed based on the stress of other people around you. You're just it's literally in the morning a symphony of tweeting birds in our garden.
Yeah, and stars in the evening.
Yeah,
there's no smog over the city.
No.
But yeah, it takes an hour just to drive out of London, and you're sat in traffic on a Saturday morning, whereas here we're just straight onto the roads. I can't remember the last time I complained about traffic.
Yeah, exactly. It's
sitting behind tractors is the alternative though.
Yeah, we do have a lot of traffic.
Also caravans.
Yeah. So I do love that. I think it just comes down to what you value, especially now we have kids. I get so overstimulated. And so on the other side, in London, there's all these things that you can do. Like there's museums and like free museums and all cultural stuff that you can take. Like I love taking Violet to those things when we're there. There's a lot going on outside of spending lots of money. You can, go in nice shops and just window shop and go in the museums. I think about when we go back to Vancouver, I'm like, it is, unless you love hiking and being outside, which I do, but other than that, like, it's such a small city and there's not that cultural element there. So that's something that holds, like, when we do think about would we move back to Vancouver near where my friends and family are, that's something that holds me back. It's just, you don't get the London.
Yeah, you think you brush up with more people in London. Maybe that's because we work here, but when we go to Canada, we still kind of do our own thing, and we see our current friends and family, and we might meet some new people through those guys. But when you're in London, you're always meeting friends of friends, and there's big gatherings going on, and you go to the pub and meet new people. It's much more social, I think.
Yeah, I'm more into like the cultural element of London. Like I just think that's a huge plus. When we were talking about moving back to like an hour outside of London, it's the fact that we could go to plays and take Violet to plays and ballets and go to the free museums, and that's the stuff that I think is amazing about it. And that's, I think, where Vancouver doesn't have this big draw to me anymore, other than the scenery. But you just have to be, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's enough big of a draw.
Well, the water is the other big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can get water here too.
Not in London.
Well, no, not in London.
You're not going in the Thames, are you?
Yeah. I don't know. Some of the things we think about of like, stay here, go back to London, stay here. There's other things, like obviously London has more choice for things like nurseries and schools, but if you move to a place in the countryside where there's good nurseries and schools, there's not going to be a massive wait list with a massive price attached. Like Violet's in an amazing nursery that we love sending her to. There's like really good schools around here. And we're not going to be pushed out by the rich London people, I guess.
One of the things that we don't think about too much is that the crime rate as well. Like we will walk out our front door and we won't even lock it half the time. But we probably shouldn't declare that.
Yeah.
But we will. If we're just going out for a walk with the dogs.
Yeah.
We might not lock all the doors.
No.
Because we're so confident nothing's going to happen, right?
Yeah. That's super true. I don't feel nervous of Violet playing in the garden as she gets older and she's able to go further. Like, I'm not going to be nervous of her around here.
Yeah, it would be so different.
Yeah, we know all our neighbors, know people down the street. Not super well, but well enough that they would know if Violet was causing trouble down the street. They know where she lives, kind of thing. And that is a nice thing. I grew up where we like rode our bikes around and, we just were out all day and mom, had no cell phones.
Yeah.
Whereas you didn't get that, and I...
No, because I lived in the city and my mum thought it was too dangerous for us to go out on our own.
Yeah. So then we get into the conversation. This is where you and I have been recently. Is like, okay, where do we want to be, though? For our next move, because it was such a big effort renovating our house to a place where we like it, and it's how we want it. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of effort. And so when we move next time, we want it to be our forever, at least for the next, at least like, I don't know, what do you think?
10 years?
10 years, yeah, I was going to say 10.
But there's something about Violet's high school friends that I don't want to disrupt. I mean, because your aunts and your grandparents moved a lot, and there's big value in them experiencing different cultures and different countries and cities and things. But also the friends that you are likely to maintain connections with come from high school.
I agree. I think there's a big benefit in being stable for high school and middle school, ideally. The next move is going to be a big one for us. And so this is where we run into, not paralysis, but we're like, we just want it to be perfect. Like, moving is expensive. It's all the tax you pay for selling a house, buying a house. These are all the things that make it hard. And then if we did want to move country... So what we did at the beginning of this year is we kind of looked at all the things that we want. We wrote a big list, and we're looking at it right now. We looked at all the potential locations, and then we numbered the things we want, and then we prioritized them. Each of us did. So I won't go into all of them, but why don't you start with what your priorities were and in order?
I'm just looking to see whether they would be in the same order. So I said a view of the water, good schools, a nearby village, outdoor activities, and proximity to a big city.
And then my top 5 were by the water, nearby young family community, curb appeal, near a nice village, and then outdoor activities. The biggest thing that came out of this is, like, next time we need to live by the water.
Yeah. But so I put that because I know how important it is to you. So I really see the benefit of living by the water, but that wouldn't be number one on my individual list.
Okay, well, you need to be better at writing your individual list.
No, I'm saying I did this as a family. There's no point in just doing our own. If they were completely different lists, then we'd end up living in different places. But to us as a family, I think I see the value of it.
I think the other thing is I am at the house more than you. I think it depends if your work changes, but you're always going to be out like 3 days a week.
Exactly, because when we had the conversation about, because I feel guilty when I go away and you have to look after the baby the whole time, and you said something that I always remember now is, well, if I was really happy with where I lived, I wouldn't care as much how much you were away.
I am happy with where we live, though. I just think this is just like a critical missing piece for me. It's like being back by the water.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think the number one from my list, it's like be by the water and be in an area that has other young families. I think that would be, but the thing is, I still want to be able to have a nice house.
Yeah, because the locations we put down that we're talking about was Vancouver, Vancouver Island, Sydney, Australia, Dundee, Scotland, Devon, Cornwall, and Norwich. If you just look at the 5 you talked about, that fits most closely to Sydney and Vancouver.
And Devon and Cornwall.
All right.
And Dundee. All of those are by the water.
Well, the outdoor activities are better in Vancouver, aren't they?
I think all of those have good... We didn't include London on this list. I think that we kind of decided London is like not
Yeah.
fit in enough of those things. It's still an ongoing thing. I think currently where I'm thinking is Devon would be a place.
Mm.
And then when we've talked about it also, we've said like Sydney would be really cool, but that's a huge move.
I think the challenge is like nowhere is perfect and jumps out as that is exactly where we want to be, which is why we're thinking about so many options.
And it's hard because nowhere will ever be perfect because nowhere will be by my family and your family.
Yeah.
Nowhere, nowhere will ever be perfect, and this is where this is why it's such a hard decision because nowhere is the perfect choice.
Yeah, but I think what we're looking at now is those pockets around these cities that are about an hour away, where we get the size of
Which cities?
But Devon is a starting point. We're looking at Devon cities, aren't we?
Okay.
But that are close enough to a city. So
okay.
like around Exeter and Plymouth.
I mean, I think when you and I talk about this, that's what you're looking at. I'm not looking at an hour outside of Exeter.
Well, it's because you just don't care about what it does to my commute. You're just like, you figure that out. I'm like putting top of my list what's important to you, and you're just like, you can travel where you want.
No, I think the point of looking at your priorities is to look at your priorities so that we end up somewhere that meets in the middle, so that not only one person's happy.
Okay.
But anyway, I think it's just such a hard thing to figure out, especially when we have a lot of similarities in how we approach things. And I think one of the most important things for us is like that we want to grow together and that we we have a vision and it overlaps, but it's not the same vision. And that's where it makes things difficult as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are out of the house more, whereas I'm working from home and I don't ever want to have to commute to a office again, so that won't change for me. But yeah, it's just such a tough one. On the whole, I wouldn't move back to a city unless it was even if we did somehow make it to Sydney, I wouldn't want to live in Sydney. I'd want to live like an hour outside of Sydney.
I think that's what I was trying to say, because to get a place with the garden and the detached house, it's not going to be in the city centre. We want some of that countryside vibe, but access to the city or access to the things we like about a city.
I think like all said and done, I like the countryside basically. I don't want to be back in a city. And that's also kind of why we started Airbnb, because we like it for the weekend, but that's it. Like we like to have the option to go to the city for the weekend and do our thing and have it, some income coming in.
Yeah.
But
we want the best of it all.
We've really thought about this a lot and we wrote out our priorities and we're kind of shaping the next place around these things that we just really, really, really want. And we're going to wait until we find that place that fits what we need. Because it's too much effort to move and move and move and try to find this thing that you're looking for. And it's like, I think it can be a common pitfall too, where people move because they're not getting what they want, but it's not really related to where they are. It's just related to them. So this kind of takes out that. It's like, these are the things we want, and we'll find that.
We'll wait for the right place.
But I also I try not to let myself delay doing things just because I still like where we live, and I still like our house and everything. And this will, at some point we'll move, but it's not, I'm not sure when. Whether it'll be...
Or where.
1 year from now, or less, or more, I'm not sure.
No.
I always equate things to like deathbed regrets. I'm on my deathbed. What will I have wished I did? And it's you usually do the thing that you want to do. So this is where, so definitely we'll be moving to the coast, probably within a year.
Just which coast is the
Just
question?
which coast?
Or which part of it?
Definitely we'll be moving to a place has more young people in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, because.
And we gotta find that place. So we're gonna explore some places in Devon. So we're gonna use some of our Airbnb weekends to explore those little villages and towns in Devon, and I'll have a soft spot for the ones that are close to Exeter and a train station that gets to London. But I can review that on my own time.
Yeah.
But the villages themselves, we're not looking for that sort of young culture atmosphere and.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the coast. That's also something that's different in this country. Like in Vancouver, the biggest, nicest houses will be right on the coast, whereas in this country, you get less of them. They're usually more run down.
I was talking to some random guy in the sauna, though.
Oh, yeah.
And He was saying that that's changed over COVID. Like,
I'm sure it has, yeah.
in the UK too, like it's getting more pricey. Like,
Yeah, because more people are having these conversations
Yeah.
where you don't need to be in the
Yeah.
city, in the office, so
Yeah.
where do you want to be? Let's be on the coast. It's almost a resurgence for those towns that when sort of flights were more expensive and people holidayed within the UK, everyone flocked to the coast.
yeah,
But those towns were built up, I don't know, through the 1900s or whatever.
Mm.
Now you can travel abroad. Less people went to the UK coast,
Mm.
but people are returning to them, which is kind of nice.
yeah. Okay, well, we're out of time. Thanks.
See you in Devon.
Where are you off to now?
Going to Devon?
Huh?
What do you say?
Anyway, Matthew has an appointment, so we have to end this now. Oh, and so if you liked this episode, please go subscribe. And if you want to keep hearing our episodes, they were coming out on Thursday, but now I'm going to release them on Wednesday. I just think that's a better day. So that's what it's going to look like in the future. I'm going to continue doing like probably a solo episode a month, and then the rest will be Matthew and I. But yeah, if you liked the episode and want to keep hearing them, go subscribe. Definitely, please rate and review the podcast.
Yeah, and comment. We like comments. I want to know what people think.
That's the same as a review. This is Matthew's knowledge and awareness.
I've never commented on a podcast.
Well, you should if we want people to comment on ours. Anyway, talk about what you liked about the podcast. If you're thinking about moving or you're having the same kind of, I don't know, conversations, let us know. And let us know what you want to hear about. All right. Bye.
Bye.